Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Flame. This time we are feeding the fire, not the fluff. So we are training the machine, but understanding how to feed the LLMs with real-time knowledge. And so Ed, let's jump straight in. Can you walk us through what RAG in terms of AI actually means?
Yeah. So, in previous episodes, we've been talking about, establishing our knowledge bases and our data repositories for our AI processes, right? And so, whether that's a Confluence space, whether it's utilizing an LLM, um, we've also got several other data repositories that we can take advantage of. And so, some of these are static data repositories, like documents that we have built out over time, whether they're online, um, typically online, so PDF files or anything from that, the spreadsheets that we've built out. So these are all additional pieces of data that we can bring in. And so what RAG means is retrieval augmented generation. So retrieval, right? So and augmented. So you typically ask an LLM for a question, and it gives you an answer back, right? So that's the
Mm,
retrieval piece right there. So, well, a lot of times, what we can do is with this additional knowledge base or additional data sources, is that we can actually go and query those as well to augment that reply with our additional specific enterprise data, right? So we
mm,
may ask Rovo a question about, hey, I need to understand, something about our user base and or this problem, or there's a service request about one of our apps, and then we have to go to look at that product documentation that may be on um, PDF files, right? And so
hmm
we can actually go ahead and query that and bring that in. So retrieval augmented generation. So we are actually augmenting our normal AI process with additional data
Yeah.
from
Okay.
that perspective.
So this was a kind of a fairly new-ish topic for me, and I like the because this is all about learning, right? So I think one of the things that I was trying to think about when we kind of were discussing the topics for this season was, okay, well, what does that mean? So how do I work with it? I mean, like when I typically when I've been doing lots of research, for example, the data that it already exists within the AI that I was using, that's predetermined, that's its
Yep.
history that it's got. And so I say, for example, on this topic, what does this mean? And it's going to go away. It's going to provide me all this history, all this knowledge that is static to it. And then I go, okay, that's really interesting. Maybe I want to refine it on this. I watched this YouTube video that explains this bit. How does that then relate into the wider topic? And like you could then, so I've done the retrieval, I've learnt the initial bit. I've then augmented it by some additional things that I'm now providing, and I'm asking it to regenerate and help me with future answers.
Yep.
Amazing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Amazing. So when would we kind of want to continue fine tuning, right? Because again, as we've always said, that every time we are chatting with an agent in this particular example, we don't want to just one and done an answer. We want to continuously fine tune and optimize whatever response we're looking for. We might continue, like you say, feed more information or whatever that is. So how would that work with kind of RAG?
Yeah. So typically, the generic LLMs are trained on the world's data, right? The internet. So they have been trained on everything from coding best practices to World War II history. So we've got all that
Mm,
world knowledge, but that's not specific to an enterprise, right? So an Atlassian. So when you're fine tuning um, the RAG piece of it, so you are actually making the internal LLM more aware of your enterprise processes, right? And then, you can fine tune based on here are typical service requests, and these typical service requests always usually hit these products, and these products always consist of these types of manuals, right? And so we can start to bring that knowledge base, that enterprise level information that is not totally, available to the world, but is inside our enterprise organization, and start utilizing that to fine tune exactly what our responses are going to be, right? So within Rovo, and service requests, we can start to really fine tune information that we're going to be pulling from and help make it smarter about whatever specific topic or request that we need, kind of thing.
Just on that then, Ed, is the kind of how would enterprises look at RAG and fine tune kind of if they were to kind of pitch them against each other?
Yeah. So normally, when you're fine tuning an LLM, right? So you have the algorithm that you're going to fine tune. So you're going to present this specific piece of data or a data set or an extreme amount of data set, and what the expected outcomes are for each scenario within that data set. And it's a huge amount of processing information, algorithm tuning, and that takes a lot. So you could theoretically do that within your organization or your enterprise, right?
Mm,
But that is a big lift. So the more efficient way is to do RAG. And so, hey, here is my specific amount of my specific information. I just need to show you where to go get it and how to get it, and then bring it back. And then once you have it, then we can use that to help with our responses, kind of thing. So it's a
mm.
bit of a more of a efficient, obviously processing wise, cheaper way to get that knowledge and then utilize it within your AI processes.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one actually because if you think so, every business out there that is doing some sort of every person even for example that is using even if you go to things like just Gemini or ChatGPT on your phone and you're asking things, you're going to always use their base knowledge. But then you might sit there and go, actually, if I relate to my business, actually, maybe what its knowledge is versus my business knowledge here, maybe there's some slight contradictions. Maybe, our business is away from the status quo and we have to kind of take that into consideration. So I think what is interesting is actually how then businesses kind of deal with those contradictions, right? Because one would still be more valuable to the others. And I think something that I kind of come back to is uh, you're going to care more about your own business knowledge, but it doesn't mean that you should completely throw away what everybody else and maybe what else the world is saying about a particular topic.
Yeah, so you can kind of consider RAG as just another layer of information that the AI is able to access and utilize for your specific scenario, right? So you can have the
Mm,
external LLM that can provide some broad information, but usually within your firewall or within your organization, you have internal information that if you're highly regulated industry, you don't want it going out, available to everyone. You just want that available inside and accessible to make decisions within your specific industry. So
mm,
healthcare or government kind of thing. So that's where RAG usually is highly beneficial. That you have all those little pieces of information within your enterprise, whether that's again Confluence spaces or PDF documents or spreadsheets or whatever you have inside that you can make available to the overall AI process. So you're getting the external LLM information plus your internal information, pulling those together to give the best information or
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've even in our role, we typically may say like, this is what your knowledge is saying. However, this could be from the external saying. We think that maybe your internal knowledge is better suited in this case, or actually maybe in this particular example, external knowledge is more beneficial. Maybe it's whatever the situation might be. Um, Now, the one thing that this really does depend on, and we've talked about this in many different times, but it is garbage in, garbage out.
Ugh.
If we feed bad knowledge in, we cannot expect it to suddenly transform into this absolutely amazing butterfly. We have to be able to provide it the right stuff.
Yeah, that's the fundamental basis of all AI. It's AI is based on data. There's no
Mm,
AI without data, and if you have bad data, you have bad AI. So again, yeah, having really clean data is just the price of admission for having good
yeah.
AI processes.
And this is nothing new. We've spoken about it on plenty of different episodes over both season 1 and 2, but this is really where it comes down to, you know, understanding what each confluence space might be about and making sure that
Yeah.
you maybe have more defined categories. If it's a team, if it's a knowledge base, what is that knowledge on? Is there an easy to understand flow? Because AI agents are just like humans. We need to understand the flow, the connection between things. How well is the metadata? When was it last updated? All of these things will contribute to the AI's success.
Yeah, we literally talked about that on the last episode on,
Mm,
it's makes it a lot easier for AI if you standardize your formats of your knowledge
mm,
base, such as Confluence. So you have a standard format, including metadata that you structure your data with, and it just makes it easier for humans and AI to access. So
mm. Okay, so let's switch gears now. Now, you and I, in this particular example, maybe we've decided to start looking at including um, the augmented data into our kind of thing, and we're going to go down right now. What's the best format that we can provide that data into whatever said AI that we
yeah.
want to do that with?
So a lot of times when you're dealing with RAG data, so it's whatever you kind of have from a enterprise format standard, whatever you've been using. Um, so that again, that could be PDF files, it could be text documents, it could be spreadsheets. So from a purely AI perspective, and then I've experienced this through a lot of my vibe coding, is that AI loves specific formats. Um, it's easier to utilize AI with specific formats, and usually those are structured formats, including like Markdown format. So it's text,
Mm,
but it's in Markdown format, which has basic um, parameters for, hey, this is the head, this is a header, this is bold.
mm,
But anything structured like HTML or JSON or anything that is easy to parse, so YAML files, anything that's easy to parse is probably the best bet.
mm,
Unfortunately, we don't have everything in an enterprise in Markdown language, right? So we'll
mm,
have different types of formats. So you'll have PDF files, you'll have Word documents, you'll have anything anything that where the AI can actually physically pull from it because it has text, right? So
yeah.
that's probably another um, level one. PDF documents that are just purely photographic is like a scanned one that's not that doesn't have the text accessible. Those are hard because the AI has to read it and then interpret what it thinks it is,
Yeah.
right? So those can be hard. Um, and then you're going to have a ton of spreadsheets. You're going to have
Well, we can't
PowerPoint.
really get away from them, can we? Unfortunately,
Yeah,
no matter how much we might try and kind of help people move into kind of more of a modern world, spreadsheets will always exist. They also still have a place for a lot of
they
different
do have
things.
a place, and people love spreadsheets, and then
Mm,
we're not going to get rid of them, so we might as well leverage them and take advantage of them and have them accessible to
mm,
our internal AI processes. And same goes with PowerPoint presentations or Google Slides or whatever you have. There's going to be a ton of these data repositories that we almost don't think of data repositories, but they are because we've actually
mm.
built them for whatever purpose or reason, and they're going to have all these different formats. But again, if you can get structured data, that'll be the easiest way to pull in information.
So the best things are anything that's got structured, easy information to pass because so HTML or like you said Markdown because it's known. H1 is header one,
Yep.
paragraph. That's what it is, and it's easy for the AI to again interpret what each section might mean, and it can do that. You have good things in terms of like you said, say docx because again it's just plain text, for example, or PDFs with some text in it. It can but do things like spreadsheets and presentations as kind of the lowest level, but that might be where you need to provide that additional context. This is the presentation. This is what each slide means.
Mhm.
That's when you're then going to get the best results.
Yeah, and yeah, get another one. You'll have internal databases.
Yeah,
The cool thing about internal databases is that by default they are pretty much structured data. So you're going to have your tables, your columns, and those will be pretty easily accessible if needed.
yeah.
So
Now, I actually brought this to you before, Ed, when Atlassian released their last like financial report, right? And I said to it, and I was like, "Hey, I want you to go and read this massive document because I don't want to read it." Uh, it only kind of provided that half answer. Now, chunking is a problem, right? You need to provide data, but is there such thing as too much data?
well, yeah, and it's actually how the AI is going to access and process the data, right? So
Uh,
if you throw 100-page document at AI. AI lives on its context, right? So it has a context where it understands what's going on, what it needs to do, but it can reach the capacity of the context pretty quickly if you throw a lot of it, right? So the idea of chunking is like, let's just throw bits and pieces of it so we don't fill up the LLM's context, so it knows how to process it, and so, we get the best answers possible. So, like you said, if you threw that big financial report at it and says, "Hey, give me something," it'll do it,
It,
but it may not
it's
be the most
yeah,
detailed one, right?
it could easily miss certain things. So actually, this is when we might say, I'm going to split 100 pages down to 20 pages, and that's on one very specific topic.
Yeah.
And then you might feed it another 20 pages and say that's so you could have last quarter to this quarter to whatever. But again, you're providing better things. You're breaking down that 100-page document into 5 different ones, and you can feed it separately.
Yeah, so the whole chunking to take advantage of better context usage is the one thing, but also when you're dealing with RAG capabilities. So, for example, if you're doing like partner enablement, an example for us, we have a lot of go-to-market PDFs, right? And so,
Mm.
a lot of times, we can say, hey, we meet a partner that wants to look at one of our products and compare it to another product. Can we get that information? And it'll go and it'll see the PDF and it'll grab it. A lot of times, those PDFs or that documentation will have some metadata already attached to it that makes it easier for the AI to utilize and know exactly what the context is immediately. And then when we get the full information, it can provide a much better answer as well. So,
Mm.
metadata with your RAG information along with chunking makes it more efficient from that perspective.
This is where some hierarchy. So we might say we want you to always look at this stuff first, and we might say then add some additional context. Go search these additional pages for additional. Um, you know, for example, the easy one I always think about might be branding. I want you to go and then read this and then reapply that knowledge somewhere else. So you're adding your knowledge, you're subsetting a different piece, and there is hierarchy in terms of how you would digest that or
Right.
take it in. Yeah, okay, that's really interesting, Ed. I think some of the things, like I said about chunking before, we need to be able to break down that knowledge so that it's digestible and it can work. Now, sometimes I think we've both seen, and plenty of other people would have seen before, where um, the AI agent that you might be working with has not always provided the most accurate answer. Maybe we've got some prior knowledge about it. Now, hallucination is a thing, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes those LLMs get a hold of a bad mushroom and it goes off the rails, kind of thing. No, just kidding. Um, yeah. So I think a lot of times the AI LLMs have gotten so good now, but I think people tend to forget that the gist of AI is that it is it's basically pattern matching, and it's expecting what the next word is in what you're trying to do, right? So if I say how now Brown, AI knows that the next word is going to be cow, right? And same thing with code. It knows that a function to get the next date of week is this in Python. So it knows certain things um, based on the patterns and based on the predictive information that has been given, and that's where you get the whole fine tuning and training and everything. But again, a lot of information that is being fed into the LLMs is obviously on the internet. Everything on the internet is not. I don't know if you know this, Dan, but everything on the internet is not true.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
know that. That's a good
so
point. Maybe I should stop reading certain pages.
yeah. So, um, so that's when you start getting hallucinations. If you hit a problem that the AI doesn't know the next word or prediction for the next pattern that it's trying to match against. If there is old or outdated information, and I hit this a lot originally when doing some of my vibe coding. Before I implemented an MCP server called Context 7, which automatically goes and gets the latest and greatest API documentation for any platform. I was hitting old API information, and so
Mm.
I had depreciated API function calls in my code and it was not building correctly. And then, we had to find out that, oh, by the way, there's a new API function for that. So
Mm.
there's a whole bunch of ways that AI can hallucinate, given what we have. The goal, or what we need to do, is how can we prevent the AI from hallucinating based on what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's especially dangerous for businesses. I mean, in general, when if you were to ask me a question and I came out maybe sounding plausible or could deliver that like confidently, you would go, "Oh, okay." Like you could consider it, right? So
Sounds good.
if if I say something with enough confidence, it's going to make you believe what I say. I think in terms of dangers for enterprise, though, if the easy ones are to kind of come back to are always kind of HR policies, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
I ask it, simple questions, what's I want to make a decision on BYOD, or for me currently, expecting a baby, maybe I need to ask it paternity, maternity cover. I need to be able to ask it how many days holiday. Now they might all seem really simple things, and maybe again it could get wrong. The outcome might not be too disastrous. However, the principle is that if you action something on the wrong procedure, so IT incidents, wrong procedure gets fired in a wrong book, people they make decisions based on wrong policies presented back to them, then it can have disastrous impacts on the business. Wrong data will equate to wrong decisions being made.
Yep, yep, exactly. That's the whole, having your processes defined, your knowledge base is defined, structured, and again, making it as easy as possible for AI to find what it needs. Now, to help with that, us as the humans need to be super explicit with our prompting on what we need or
Yeah,
what we want.
yeah.
To me, that is the best thing that you can do to help eliminate hallucinations, is to be like as explicit and detailed as possible in asking what you want. Whether we're using
Yeah.
normal LLM plus RAG, whatever, you just need to make sure that you can be as explicit as
Yeah, so
possible.
so prompt engineering, which is becoming more and more important, obviously, as we go through things, that's a way a business can mitigate in terms of what the possible outcome might be.
Yeah, yeah, that, and then it's funny because every now and then, you just got to tell that LLM, hey, if you don't know, let me know. You don't know,
Yeah,
because sometimes it'll try. LLMs are almost like a puppy. They want to please you, right? So if they don't understand,
that's a really good
they
analogy.
don't have all the context, they're going to try to present you something that they think is what you want, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. So you got to tell it every now and then, be like, hey, if you don't know, just so you don't know, and then we'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
So there are plenty of guides, including one from DX, which talk about prompt engineering and the ways that you can go through it. If you think that you want to learn more about prompt engineering, definitely take a look. Search literally prompt engineering guides. There's plenty out there. But in a nutshell, prompt engineering is saying, if you're not sure, say so. Don't or only digest information that is presented in these documents. If it isn't presented, say something back to me. So it might be, if you are unsure, ask me a question. All of those are prompting something to come out from
Yes.
the answer.
What you said right there, I always do that. Whenever even if I'm super explicit on what I want, I will always end it with, please ask any clarifying questions if you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are
Every time.
easy examples, but again, for your use case, prompt engineering guides exist. Definitely go follow through with them. Now, there are a couple of other mitigating strategies that businesses can apply to them. Now, we've spoken on a few of these before. Maybe we can just give a quick one-liner and we can reference things before. But confidence scoring.
Yeah.
What would confidence scoring be?
Yeah. Yeah. So you can have the AI come back to you with a specific answer or reply, and then it can come back and have an actual confidence score that it can present to you. So a lot of times when I vibe coded certain dashboards, I will have it say, post the confidence score on what the subject matter was, whatever it was, and be like, it needs to be, at 85% higher confidence score before we can move on to the next step, kind of
Yeah.
thing is what I'll
Yeah.
do. And so, if it's not there, then the AI is like, okay, well, we can't go on to the next step because it is not at that confidence threshold.
And that's where you can almost use confidence scoring and prompt engineering, which is what is your confidence score on the current knowledge? 60%. Okay, well, we need to get 85. So now you need to ask me questions
Yes,
so that I can fill that 25% gap. And
correct.
that's how, again, we lead nicely into human in the loop decision making, right?
Human in the loop.
So
Didn't we do a podcast on that?
we might have done a whole podcast on human in the loop, but in essence, it is about you and the AI agent working together. It is so that you don't allow an AI agent to run away with itself, and that is constantly having to provide feedback and opportunities for you to recorrect its course. That is essentially what it's asking you to do.
No, in the same vein, you can actually tell the AI like, hey, if you don't know, or if this is outside of the scope of your context that you don't understand, ask the
Yeah,
questions.
exactly.
It's like,
So
hey,
again, prompt engineering with human in the loop.
yep,
Ask questions something back so that we can provide that feedback. These are all easy ways. Now, something that should always happen, and I would always recommend, is domain constraints, i.e., not physical appfire.com domain, but as in like, I want you to only go and look at these very specific areas of knowledge. Maybe an easy one might be, for example, product documents. All of our product documents are online. And if I'm asking you a product related question, you need to go and have a look at these product documents. And that is your primary source of knowledge, for
yep,
example.
yep,
Now, there are plenty of different strategies online. Those are just some examples of them. But definitely, if you feel that hallucination is becoming a thing and you aren't so sure, it isn't a point to stop using it. It is a point to kind of check how you may be working with that particular agent.
yeah, and like anything, measure the responses, right? So, track their accuracy, over time. How many times did they say, "Hey, I don't know," and ask you questions, or Um, is there any patterns that you see, with consistent errors or
Yeah.
hallucinations for specific topics, and, monitor those. And then that kind of can help you pinpoint exactly where you need to, apply fine tuning from a RAG perspective or,
Yeah. Now, it's not all doom and gloom about some hallucinations. Sometimes it might be useful. One of the really good examples is that if you are sat down with a team saying, how should we work this year? And you're trying to mind map or brainstorm some ideas, that is when you can apply, because it's ideation, right? It is
yeah,
before it becomes a risk. Those are when you want AI agents to chuck loads of different ideas at you, and you can kind of use it. So
yeah. You can just
definitely, it's
say,
not always doing it.
just tell AI this is blue sky, right? This is, we are brainstorming. You are Albert Einstein, and we are about to go into some serious brainstorming. Let's have it, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, Dan. So we have talked about a lot of regarding how we feed the machine, right? So we've
Mm,
talked about several ways of, we've talked about the knowledge bases before, but how are these knowledge bases or data repositories getting into um, our AI processes from an external and internal perspective, right? So we talked about RAG, retrieval-augmented generation. So we are taking information from different data repositories, whether that's PDF files or spreadsheets or Confluence spaces, and we're pulling those into our overall AI process to combine that with the general LLM information. Pulling that in, we have to think about how we, process information from a context perspective for the AI. So how do we chunk that? How do we make it easier to pull that information in? And again, chunking it up, having the metadata already associated in a structured format. Is the best way possible. And again, we talked about some of those different structures that are easy for AI, such as the Markdown, anything structured, HTML, JSON, YAML files. Those are the easiest, to pull in. What else? We talked about.
Well, I think the big thing then from there was about hallucination, right?
Yeah,
It's sometimes it's okay, like I said, with brainstorming. However, if you're asking for it to provide some real detailed context, it's probably not. So how do you deal with it? When to spot it? How to then mitigate in terms of maybe prompt engineering or thinking about confidence scoring, but especially human in the loop, making sure that you and the agent are always kind of clarifying and working together.
Yep. Yep.
So I think that's it for today's episode, but thank you very, very much for joining. All about RAG, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.